The idea that there are buildings that don't have as many kids and then we consolidate them and now we use all of our resources to meet these kids' needs rather than spreading our resources out amongst buildings that aren't as filled is the basic logic from the school district. And it can sound attractive as a way to get funding, given that they're criminally underfunding our schools. Maybe we can hunker down and try this consolidation thing. But my understanding of the well-resourced schools plan is that when you consolidate schools, what ends up happening is you have 0.5 librarian at school 1 and 2. And now all the kids go together in one school and you still have a 0.5 librarian, only the problem is you have twice as many kids serving, right? The same with the nurse. You have a 0.5 nurse at the school, and now you still have a 0.5 nurse only for twice as many kids. That's not a formula for a well-resourced school. That's actually a formula for making that for kids. And these are tough choices. These are tough decisions. It's not like there's an easy answer to fix all this right away. It's not like we just do this one quick fix and it's all solved. It actually requires building a struggle in the world's richest city, one of the richest cities the world has ever known. It requires building a struggle to win the money our kids deserve.
Just quickly, we have done the work. The parents have rallied. We've done the work. We know these closures are leading to fewer resources for our kids. This specific plan at these 4 consolidated schools, there's going to be 8 fewer FTE at these new, bigger schools. That is not well-resourced. That's less resource than currently exists. We know that 2 of the schools may lose their Title I status, which means they may lose federal funding that go to support our low-income kids right now. We know that some of the special education pathways that the district says will continue cannot accommodate all of the current students in the existing schools. The special education students may not get to go with their other schools. So we already know a lot of the information that Jesse said. We know this is going to be a disaster for those communities and for those students and families and educators who are still reeling from the effects of the pandemic.
The school closures in 2007 and 2009 were an unmitigated disaster for the Seattle Public Schools. There is no measure where this was useful for our kids, not even by the school district's own reckoning, right? In 2007, we lost 20% of the kids. Let me underline that. We lost 20% of the kids at the schools who were closed. What that means is they said they needed to close schools to make up the budget deficit. In fact, we lost money at the school district. It ended up costing us money to close these schools because we lost the per pupil funding from the state that went with those 20% of students.
So altogether, First Seattle Schools was born actually from Dunlap losing 2 teachers last year in the October shuffle. Dunlap is a high poverty school where 95% kids of color, a lot of multilingual learners. And we came together, we wanted to fight for our school and advocate for our kids, but we needed others to do that with us because we don't have the resources or capacity. So we know we need collective voice. We need all of us in the whole city seeing every one of us as one big city community, getting out of silos, learning from each other to use access and privilege to bring the movement forward.
Because at the South Student Union, we've been trying to fight for an increase to mental health money, and that passed in November of last year, but Mayor Carroll only implemented 10 million of the 20 million, and in August that got struck down, and we're trying to again implement the full 20 million, have transparency on where that money is going. We've been met with no answers by Mayor Bruce Carroll or the South City Council. That's all.
We talk a lot about 50% of our budget should go towards education at the state level. And we don't want to pin education against other social services. services, and our schools are expected to do more, right? So we can't just think about that 50% number. I think we should think about our state's GDP, our actual wealth, and our actual taxable income that we have in the state. And so Chris Rydell, the superintendent of OSBI, he says we should spend 3.54 over the national average of our GDP. Right now we spend 3.14 of our GDP. Getting to that would be about $3 billion a year. Global leaders are at closer to 4% of GDP. That would mean $10 billion of investment in schools. That's a huge number. A price tag legislators know, I've heard for years, but have been unwilling to find new revenue to do that.
The state gives us 63% of our operating budget, even though their constitutional duty, the paramount duty, is to amply and fully fund public education. We're getting 63%. 16% is local taxes, so that's like local levies. So we all vote on local levies that fund us. They're supposed to be for enrichment. That's not basic ed. We have to use it for basic ed because we don't get enough. And if 282 of 295 school districts have local levies that they have to use to fund education, that to me shows the state is not funding us enough. Like Oliver said, only about 7% is federal. It's like Title I, low income, or special education students, or free reduced price lunch. About 6% is grants and donations. Most of that is actually from the city of Seattle. We have a Department of Education and Early Learning, separate from SPS, and they've given funding through their levy for the school district. And I just want to note something, because PTA funding comes up a lot. It's only 0.5% of the budget. It's tiny. And imagine if all the parents who were fundraising joined us in the state to urge the state to fully fund education. That would be incredible.
We can say we agree we need $10 billion to more equitably fund our schools. Where would we actually get that money from? So you don't know, right now, Washington State is second to Florida when it comes to our fiscal progressive nature, our fiscal tax code. So our tax code means it taxes poor people and working people disproportionately more than it does wealthy folks. If you're making above $900,000, you pay about 4% of your income. If you're making at the bottom of the income amount of $33,000, you're paying 20%. And I'm slowing down. So our tax code is a huge part in the revenue side of things. Where are we going to get that money? So Washington State is supposedly a very progressive state, yet we have the second most regressive tax code in the country. Many advocates, especially us, the Big Five, People's Big Five, including University of Washington Professor David Knight, who's the education finance expert, we're pushing forward what we call the People's Big Five. And so I'll be real quick with the rest of this, but the big three come from all the school administrators, all the big associations, and they say we need to patch up the prototypical, we need to patch up basic education pretty much, and cover transportation, special education, and what are called MSOP costs. So office supplies, some curriculum development, general administrative costs that come with education. That's great. Sure, we need more money for that. But we have structural inequities that we need to address. And so the Big Five comes in and says we need to change what's called the Learning Assistance Program and Local Effort Assistance. So that's for those programs we can talk more about later in our breakouts. Come and learn more about the legislature with me. And number 5 really says we need new progressive revenue. That is, we need a progressive income tax, we need a wealth tax, we need a payroll tax, like a lot of people are talking about as kind of like jumpstart here in Seattle at the state level, and then some people talk about what's ultimately a progressive real estate or estate tax, which is called REIT 2.0. That's not very cute. So those are some of our checklist of progressive revenue options that we're pushing and fighting for. It's not
North End schools typically have teachers that make way more money than the teachers on the South End. Okay, so if the money went to the schools, Southern schools will be able to use their money to buy more supports. They can't because it's all going to the North End School with the more expensive teachers. So it's a little misleading of what was shared, that you get more teachers because you have more need, but you're still getting less money because your teachers make less money. If we have equitable funding in each building, then the schools that have need would have funds to buy the supports that they need and currently do.
The Seattle Times found that there are 11 billionaires in the Seattle region, and there are over 54,000 millionaires. We have companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, and Forbes recently found that Washington State is tied for the most billionaires of any state, and our billionaires are richer than the other billionaires. Okay? That's the landscape. And it's because they refuse to pay their fair share. It's because they are as stingy and greedy as they are that our kids don't have the classes that they need. The state budget in K-12 was at 50% of the budget in 2019. The 2018-19 school year, they were spending close to 50% of their budget on education. It's now down to 43.1%. It's the slashing of the school budget is the reason why we're cutting. We have proposals to close schools here in Seattle, right? So that's the root of the problem. There's no way around this other than to tax the rich and make them pay their fair share.
Can you give a big round of applause to all of our panelists?